trying to tell her something, but she couldn't really make out what she was trying to say to her.
Investigators can immediately tell this was no random intruder.
She does notice that the door is unlocked, and this gives her a sinking feeling in her stomach.
Whoever committed the crime was led in voluntarily.
But tracking down the killer will be easier said than done.
What do you mean he's gone?
How did he just do this and leave? He had been on the run for 3.5 years.
The Mexican authorities got involved.
And everything was just a roller coaster.
May 27, 2014. It's just before morning twilight in the Atlanta bedroom community of Venetian Hills.
Venetian Hills is an urban environment, predominantly hard-working, middle-class community.
It serves as a very good place for persons who work within the city.
But just after 3 a.m., as many residents are getting their last moments of sleep, the quiet night is interrupted by a harrowing 911 call.
I need ambulance, please. I thought the man. Okay, is she awake? No.
She frantically begs them to get there quick because her sister is dying.
Okay, she's saying she's unconscious? Okay, breathing.
The caller, LaToya Jackson, provides the address of her mother's apartment where she and her sister Rashawn had been staying the night.
Atlanta police officers and emergency medical technicians rush to the mother's apartment.
When they arrive, first responders find Rashawn unresponsive on the floor, surrounded by her devastated mother and sister.
We're gonna do everything we can do.
Responding officers start immediately providing rescue techniques. And it's critical because every second counts when it comes to trying to save someone's life.
As Rashawn's life hangs in the balance, her family is left wondering what evil has infiltrated their home and why was Rashawn the target. Born and raised in Atlanta, 34-year-old Rashawn Jackson was always known for her kind and generous spirit.
People really loved her and gravitated toward her. She was a very devoted daughter, a very loving aunt.
She liked going shopping, buying gifts for her nieces and nephews. She loved every last person that she's around. She's just that type of person.
Rashawn also understood the value of hard work.
She was a manager at a popular Atlanta restaurant.
She was a good employee. You know, she would work all the time, very dependable, very trustworthy.
The first time I met Rashawn, I just started working at the Chick-fil-A Dorf House, and she was a leader there. She's very outspoken. She loved to teach, so I can go to her about anything. She's very easy to talk to. She's funny at times, and I just loved being around her.
Even with all her success, Rashawn dreamed of having someone to share it with.
Rashawn was also very optimistic about love. She wanted to find someone that she could share life with.
And when Rashawn met a man named Maurice Nesbitt in 2009, it seemed as though she'd finally found her match.
Excuse me, how you doing? I know you're not leaving already.
They initially met at a club. He approached her.
Yeah, I actually got to get up early in the morning for work.
So what's your name?
It's Rashawn.
Rashawn, I'm Maurice. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
Rashawn was intrigued by Maurice's bold personality and charming demeanor.
On his mother's side, he was Hispanic. His mom still resided in Mexico, and Maurice was actually bilingual.
He was good looking, he was charismatic, and she was drawn to all of those things about him.
Can I trouble you for one more dance before you do?
Okay, just one?
Just one.
Instead of catching her ride home, Rashawn decided to head back upstairs with Maurice and never looked back.
They ended up dancing the night away. After that, Rashawn was smitten.
They got to know each other. They started dating.
She was drawn to his character, his personality, the way he made her feel.
But Maurice wasn't just charming. He was also talented.
Maurice was an up-and-coming rapper. He had some popularity in the city of Atlanta.
He went by the name of Mega Ruckus.
He had some videos that he put out, and he was gaining some traction.
He even had a video with Young Thug, who was rising in his popularity in Atlanta at the time. He was moving in those circles.
The Atlanta rap scene is kind of the mecca for rappers trying to make it in the South. Maurice made lots of music videos showing off cars, money, jewelry.
It really appeared as though Maurice's music career was going to take off, and Rashawn was very attracted to that exciting lifestyle.
As far as Rashawn was concerned, Maurice was someone with a bright future ahead of him.
She was crazy about him.
The couple were head over heels in love, and they were making plans to move in together.
But now, instead of moving in with the man she loved, Rashawn has been shot inside her mother's apartment and left clinging to life.
It was quickly determined that the victim had been shot in the head, point blank.
Initially, you can see with the contact wound to the head that it was not likely that she would survive.
Pulse is gone.
Unfortunately, with all their efforts to save her life, it was too late. Rashawn Jackson is dead.
34-year-old restaurant manager Rashawn Jackson had fallen head over heels for up-and-coming Atlanta rapper Maurice Nesbitt, a.k.a. Mega Ruckus.
She saw him as someone that she could really spend her life with and have a serious relationship with.
She loved his creativity and his passion for his music. It seemed like his career was getting ready to take off.
But now, Rashawn is lying in a pool of blood with a fatal gunshot wound.
Paramedics attempted to provide first aid, but the victim had been shot in the head, point blank.
Pulse is gone.
Unfortunately, with all their efforts to save her life, it was too late. Rashawn Jackson is dead.
Officers give the devastating news to Rashawn's mother and sister.
Rashawn's mother was beside herself.
The family was just too distraught to even communicate with police officers at that time.
In an effort to get a more cohesive and coherent statement and give them time to calm down, they did have to take them down to the police precinct.
As Rashawn's family continues to process the tragedy, detectives arrive to begin processing the crime scene.
Her body was in between the bed and the closet.
It seems Rashawn was caught off guard by her killer. There's a pool of blood under Rashawn's head, as well as blood splatter leading into the direction of the closet.
Around the room, detectives locate more potential clues.
We see some cigarettes in the room. We see a couple of beer cans.
These items were collected and sent off to the crime lab in hopes that they would find DNA evidence.
Investigators also find ballistic evidence that they can try to tie back to the murder weapon.
The investigators find a 9mm shell casing, which is collected and sent off to ballistic analysis.
Outside of Rashawn's bedroom, the rest of the apartment appears to be undisturbed.
When investigators checked the entirety of the house, they found that there's no evidence of forced entry. The house had not been ransacked. There appeared that no items were missing.
It seems more like whoever killed Rashawn was either let into the apartment or had a key of their own.
This must have been someone Rashawn knew.
Hoping to get an idea of who that person might be, officers begin a canvass of the apartment complex.
Officers began door-to-door canvassing of the neighborhood.
But while several neighbors heard the gunshot, none of them saw the person who fired the gun.
Without a visual description, homicide detectives had very little to go on.
Until they meet with the apartment complex's leasing manager.
Detectives discovered that there are cameras located on the property that could provide some surveillance video.
All right. Here's the parking lot just before 3 a.m.
He shows detectives the footage, and they can see a white car pulling up around 2:41 a.m.
The vehicle parks just a few yards away from the Jacksons' front door, and a shadowy figure exits.
You see him get out of his car. You can see him walk in the apartment.
For the next few minutes, there's no other activity on the video.
He stayed in there for probably 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
At that point, he can be seen exiting the apartment, entering his vehicle, and speeding away.
As they continue to watch the video, minutes later, they could see emergency vehicles arriving on the scene to attend to Rashawn.
Radio, we have a confirmation on suspect vehicles.
Detectives believe this is no coincidence.
Detectives are certain that this man has to be Rashawn's killer.
I do want to acknowledge one thing about Rashawn that I hold as a special moment. I have 5 kids. And out of all my kids, nobody have never thrown me like an actual real baby shower. And she was that person to actually throw me an actual real baby shower with one of my sons back then. And it was actually very beautiful. She actually rented out a whole store and she went the full mile. I love that about her. She goes the full mile for everything. That was just another special moment that I always cherish, that she did a baby shower for me, my first and my only baby shower that I had.
Police in Atlanta, Georgia are investigating the homicide of Rashawn Jackson after the 34-year-old restaurant manager was shot dead in the middle of the night.
In this once quiet neighborhood of Venetian Hills, the people are just fearful. If something like this could happen to Rashawn, what about the rest of them?
But detectives have a hunch this was a targeted attack. And now they've discovered surveillance video of Rashawn's suspected killer leaving the crime scene.
It definitely looked like he was in a hurry to get out of there.
While the video is compelling evidence, it's not a slam dunk for investigators.
It does not provide a clear view of the suspect's face, nor the tag number on the vehicle. The video surveillance is just too grainy to make out clear details.
Still, they radioed to police in the area with a description of the car.
The detective issued an all-points bulletin to be on the lookout for that vehicle. The white sedan.
News of Rashawn's death soon spreads throughout the greater Atlanta area.
When I first heard of Rashawn's passing, I was on my way to work at that moment where we worked together. Once I found out I couldn't work the rest of the day, a few of us couldn't work the rest of the day. So it was, the hardest news.
Meanwhile, detectives head back to the station to speak with Rashawn's grieving mother and sister.
They start trying to figure out what happened. What did they hear? What did they see? Who could have done this to Rashawn?
Rashawn's loved ones are still overwhelmed by everything that's happened.
They are absolutely distraught, but they want to see justice served.
Detectives start the interview by asking the family members to slowly walk them through everything that happened that night.
I'm so sorry for your loss. We're gonna get to the bottom of this.
Can you please tell us everything you remember about what happened?
Yes, well, it was a normal evening.
Rashawn's family tells detectives that yesterday was just like another day. Nothing stuck out of the ordinary about Rashawn's activity or her behavior.
They were at her mother's home, and Rashawn had came home from work, and they were all just hanging out for a little while.
They all went to bed around 11 p.m.
LaToya says she distinctly remembers locking the front door before turning in for the night.
She told the police that she locked the door, and she went upstairs and she laid in the bed with her mom and fell asleep.
I'm a heavy sleeper, so I didn't hear the gunshot go off, but it woke Mama up.
That's right.
Around 3 a.m., Miss Jackson was awakened by a loud pop.
I tried to find the source of the noise.
It startles her, so she gets up out of her bed and moves towards the sound.
Miss Jackson says she walked into the living room and didn't see anything unusual. However, she did hear a car start outside.
She hears the sound of tires screeching.
At this point, she looks out the window and doesn't see the car. But she does notice the door is unlocked, and this gives her a sinking feeling in her stomach.
Rashawn? Rashawn!
Concerned, Rashawn's mother went to check on her.
She called out to Rashawn, and there was no answer.
When she opened the bedroom door, she saw Rashawn lying on the floor near her closet.
She was unsure of what exactly was going on, but as she approached her daughter, she saw the blood.
Rashawn! Oh, my baby! Latoya!
Rashawn's sister runs in the room. She goes to assist her sister, and her sister is barely breathing.
What happened? I don't know!
Miss Jackson tells detectives that for a moment, Rashawn was still conscious and trying to say something.
Oh, come on, baby. Come on, baby. We're here.
She tries to, talk to her, say don't die, stay awake. And she says Rashawn is trying to speak to her.
She's trying to say something to her, but she can't get the words out. So at this point, Rashawn's sister grabs the phone to dial 911.
I need ambulance, please. My sister is sad.
Rashawn's mother says she held her daughter in her arms until first responders arrived.
She said she was trying to feel for her heartbeat, but by the time paramedics arrived, it was too late.
Her daughter basically died in her arms.
Did you hear anyone else inside of the home? Was Rashawn fighting with anyone?
Not at all.
There is no statements from her mother or sister that they heard any type of arguing or anything like that. All we knew was there was a gunshot.
It's a horrifying story, and investigators offer their condolences for the family's loss.
But they also have an important question they're hoping the family will be able to answer.
They were asking them who could have done this to her.
The two women immediately give the same answer.
There's only one person that they could think of.
They told him, basically, that the only person that could have done it was Maurice Nesbitt.
Police in Atlanta have just heard a harrowing account from Rashawn Jackson's mother about her daughter dying in her arms after suffering a fatal gunshot wound from an apparent intruder.
There was nothing more that she could do, and the pain and the devastation that she felt in that moment as the life left her daughter's body, she would never be the same again.
Based on evidence at the Jackson home, it seems that Rashawn Jackson opened the door for her killer, and her loved ones have a strong suspect.
They told him, basically, that the only person that could have done it was Maurice Nesbitt.
When Rashawn met Maurice in 2009, she was instantly infatuated with him. He possessed this larger-than-life rapper persona, and she was mesmerized by that.
He sold her a pipe dream that she could have it all with him, and she wanted to believe it.
It didn't take long, though, before Rashawn's family started to notice a change in her.
She changed when she was with him. She wasn't the same anymore.
Her mood turned dark, and she began not to be the bubbly person that they knew.
And I think that's when her family started to become suspicious of what was happening.
I never liked him.
Rashawn's mother definitely did not approve of Maurice. When Maurice came around, it was kind of a different energy that did not need to be in her house at that time.
Rashawn's mother says when she first heard Maurice rapping under his Mega Ruckus persona, she was shocked by how crude his lyrics were.
His songs were about violence, guns, and his lyrics were very demeaning towards women.
I expressed my concerns to Rashawn, but she just brushed it off.
When he talked to Rashawn about it, she said he only rapped about those things, and that's not who he was in real life.
But before long, the family noticed other telltale signs that something was horribly wrong.
They began to notice marks on Rashawn's body. And when they asked her about it, she would make excuses as though she fell or bumped into something.
And it was unlike her to lie to us, but we could tell that she was covering up for him.
They believed that Maurice had begun abusing her.
And according to the family, the abuse wasn't only physical.
He was taking her hard-earned money from her.
I'm gonna need another 1K for this video.
Maurice did not have a steady income. He would definitely come to Rayshawn for money if he needed it, whether it be for music or whenever he asked for it. Rayshawn was being used.
Baby, are you sure? I mean, we've already spent a lot.
I know, baby, but I promise when this video pop off, it's gonna make a difference for the both of us.
He made promises to Rashawn. You know, he promised her that they would move in together, that they would be a family, and she took those to heart. And she would actually give him some of her checks in an effort to show him how much she loved him.
Thank you, baby. This new video gonna be fire.
Well, you know I'm your biggest fan.
I only heard maybe 1 or 2 songs. They were not hit makers to me.
I think he was making his life or trying to appear more grandiose than it actually was. No one was really buying what he was selling, so his career didn't take off.
We tried to convince Rashawn that she deserved better and that she needed to dump him.
They started to tell her, like, hey, maybe he's not this great guy that you think he is, and you should probably separate from him.
Eventually, she started to listen to us.
After time, Rashawn began to understand that the abuse was occurring, and she decided that she would not continue it.
Finally, in May 2014, after almost 6 years of dating, Rashawn worked up the courage to break up with Maurice.
She told Maurice that she was tired of being used and abused by him.
But she was still afraid of him. That's why she moved in with me.
To escape his reach and access, she moved back in with her mother.
He was still trying to harass her on the phone.
She didn't have no contact at all, but it was ways Maurice found her. That was what she would say, he would find me.
They had been apart for probably about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, when, you know, he didn't stop calling, didn't stop trying to text her, but she was separating herself from him, just going to work and just trying to get things back to normal.
I think that's why he came to the house last night, to confront her in person.
Based on what they're hearing, detectives agree that Maurice is a probable suspect. They just have one more question for Rashawn's loved ones.
Do you know what kind of car Maurice drives?
Yes, a white sedan.
The suspect from their surveillance footage was also driving a white sedan.
That's him. That's definitely him.
Armed with the family statement, detectives begin their work to bring Maurice to justice.
They have information that Maurice Nesbitt drives his white car, but that isn't sufficient, you know, for them to get an arrest warrant because nobody saw him shoot her. They needed more evidence, so they started doing a background search of Maurice Nesbitt.
When they run the background check, investigators discover that Maurice has a long criminal history.
They discovered that Maurice Nesbitt was a convicted felon. He did have a prior history for drugs, for guns, and also for domestic violence.
Some of the police reports were filed by Rashawn herself.
In one incident report from 2009, Rashawn reports that Maurice punched her in the face and kicked her in the mouth.
Maurice threatened to kill not only her, but her whole family if she didn't do what he wanted her to do.
Rashawn told police that Maurice was terrorizing her. It's clear to the detectives that this was an abusive relationship that was spiraling out of control.
And when investigators pull Maurice's DMV records, they confirm what Rashawn's loved ones told them. Maurice owns a white sedan, like the one seen in the surveillance video.
The car description from the DMV records matched the car that was on the crime scene the night of Rashawn's murder.
But the DMV records aren't the only proof the car belongs to Maurice.
They ended up finding one of his rap videos on YouTube. In the video, while he's rapping and stuff, he has this white car in the background.
For the police, this is a clear sign that they're on to the right track.
Detectives needed to speak with Maurice Nesbitt immediately.
Atlanta homicide investigators believe Maurice Nesbitt is responsible for the shooting death of his ex-girlfriend, 34-year-old Rashawn Jackson.
His car was spotted on surveillance at the apartment complex when Rashawn was killed, and he had been abusive to her in the past.
The detective's next move is try to have a sit-down interview and question Maurice, but when they reach out to him, he does not answer the phone.
So at this point, they issue a BOLO for Maurice and a warrant for his arrest.
While patrol officers are on the hunt, investigators continue to build their case.
The DA's office gets involved at that point, and we start issuing subpoenas for phone records to see if, in addition to the car being in a surveillance video, we could link him there with his cell phone.
As they look through the log of calls and texts, what they see lines up with what they heard from Rashawn's family. Maurice refused to accept her rejection.
In the couple's messages, Rashawn is clearly pushing Maurice away, but he refuses to take no as an answer.
Whenever she tries to turn him away, he resorts to threats and insults.
There were several text messages where he would text her back to back to back. Why aren't you answering your phone? Why don't you answer your phone? Where are you?
Less than 2 weeks before the murder, Maurice even sent an overt threat.
Maurice sends a message that every dog has its day, and yours is coming up.
To investigators, this was a clear indication that he was plotting some type of revenge for Rashawn cutting him out of her life.
With every piece of evidence they came across, the police were convinced more and more that Maurice was responsible for this crime.
Their suspicions were heightened when they realized that Maurice was clearly laying low to avoid law enforcement.
Weeks go by without any sign of the wanted man.
There was no doubt in my mind. I knew it was Maurice. At that time, we was wondering, where is Maurice? How did he just do this and leave?
He was doing everything in his power to avoid coming in contact with law enforcement.
Then on July 23rd, 2014, investigators finally receive a solid lead on their fugitive.
Homicide.
Nearly 2 months after Rashawn was killed, police received a tip that Maurice was seen in Jonesboro, Georgia. Jonesboro is a very small community just south of Atlanta.
Police swiftly respond to the address provided by the tipster and take Maurice into custody. In an interrogation room, they hope he'll come clean, but those hopes are instantly dashed.
When the interrogation starts, Maurice immediately asks for a lawyer.
Give me my lawyer, man.
He declines to answer any questions.
But despite Maurice's unwillingness to give a statement, he has no choice but to give police a sample of his DNA.
They already had a warrant for the DNA, so he couldn't get out of that one. If his DNA is found on the items collected from Rashawn's bedroom, they can place him at the scene of the crime.
Even without a confession, The investigators feel confident in the evidence they've gathered. They charge Maurice with felony murder and book him in the Fulton County Jail.
When Rashawn's family gets the information that Maurice had been arrested, they are relieved that he is finally behind bars.
Knowing that Maurice was finally arrested and actually facing a jury, that brought a big relief.
But that relief is short-lived.
Prosecutors really wanted to have those DNA results before the trial, but it was taking a while.
In Georgia, you have 90 days to indict someone after they've been in custody, or either they're entitled to bond at that point. So once the 90 days came, I believe his attorney filed a motion for a bond reduction hearing, and they presented some information that his health may be at risk, that he had cancer.
I've never heard of Rashawn saying that he had cancer or being sick at all.
The judge, I'm not sure if they actually verified it or not, but he was granted a bond to deal with the issues surrounding his cancer.
His bond is set at $150,000, and he's actually able to make the bond. He was allowed to be released on an ankle monitor.
For Rashawn's family, this was infuriating and insulting, that the potential killer could just walk out of the courtroom, a free man, essentially.
When I first learned Maurice was out on bond, I felt like there was almost no justice there.
But when the DNA results from the crime scene come back, prosecutors finally feel ready to try the case.
When the test results come back, they are a positive match for the saliva found on the cigarette butts and the beer cans.
It places him in the room, which is really, really strong evidence.
Maurice Nesbitt's murder trial begins on September 25th, 2017. In their opening statement, prosecutors argue that the couple's relationship reached a tipping point when Rashawn finally decided to leave.
She was getting fed up with it, and she had made up her mind and she wasn't gonna go back. And I guess that's when he decided that if he couldn't have her, then no one else could have her.
Once he felt that his control was being lost and she was finally breaking free, he couldn't handle that.
In the early morning hours of May 27th, Maurice was begging Rashawn to let him see her.
Around 3 o'clock in the morning, Maurice shows up to the apartment.
Records show Maurice had been spamming Rashawn's phone with calls.
So Rashawn was probably expecting him.
Yeah, look, can I talk to you in person? I just need 5 minutes of your time, and that's it.
He asked to just talk and hang out for a few minutes. Rashawn lets him in.
Victims let their abusers back into their lives for numerous reasons: emotional attachment, hoping for change, or fear of retaliation. The cycle of abuse can make leaving these type of relationships permanently a difficult challenge.
Prosecutors argue Maurice convinced Rashawn to let him come up to her room.
And this feel like old times. I really been missing you.
I know.
Maurice knows. I told you it's not like that between me and you anymore.
Instead of parting amicably, Maurice decided that he was going to put his plan in action and end her life.
Okay, if that's what you want.
Because there was no struggle at the scene of the crime, prosecutors believe that Rashawn never saw what was coming. She was totally taken by surprise.
While the woman he claimed to love for 6 years lay on the floor bleeding out, Maurice flees the scene and goes into hiding.
The prosecutors laid an insurmountable amount of evidence.
Maurice could tell things were not going in his favor.
By the 5th day of trial, prosecutors are feeling confident they'll have a win.
I was pleased with the evidence that I had put up, and we were about to do closings and get that conviction for her.
But Maurice has other plans.
What do you mean he's gone?
And on this morning, Maurice was not there.
Maurice had gone on the run.
Atlanta prosecutors are 5 days into the trial of aspiring rapper Maurice Nesbitt for the murder of his girlfriend of 6 years, Rashawn Jackson.
But now on the last day of the trial, Maurice has failed to show up to court. And by all indications, he's gone on the run.
It's getting closer and closer to time when court is supposed to start, and there's still no Maurice Nesbitt.
What do you mean he's gone?
They quickly tracked down Maurice's ankle monitor, and they were able to determine it was cut off 6 hours earlier.
Based on the information from his ankle monitor, Maurice was last seen heading south from Atlanta on Interstate 75.
By now, investigators know he could be hundreds of miles away.
Atlanta police now issue a BOLO, and surrounding agencies are notified.
He's considered armed and dangerous.
Back at the courthouse, prosecutors present a plan to proceed with the trial in Maurice's absence.
The state argued that it would be unfair to Rashawn and her family to have to do this again.
The judge agrees, and Maurice's trial continues without him.
The judge decided that we would do the closing arguments with him not being present and let the jury deliberate without him being present, which was great for the state. We can argue now, he did it, that's why he's gone, that's why he ran.
The jury agrees.
They find Maurice guilty of felony murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony.
He is sentenced to life in prison, plus an additional 5 years for the weapons charges.
But investigators still have to find him.
Maurice not being there for his sentencing was kind of crazy. It was very sad knowing that he wasn't there for his sentencing.
He moved underground, he was just moving around so that he couldn't be seen.
Weeks go by with no sign of the wanted fugitive and no leads on his whereabouts.
Since his mother's from Mexico, they think he could have fled the country.
The Mexican authorities got involved, and they did everything in their power to track him down. Unfortunately, there were never any solid leads.
Weeks turn into months, and months turn into years with no sign of Maurice.
3.5 long years go by without any new developments. But that changes on April 12, 2021, when the case receives renewed national attention.
The story is featured on In Pursuit with John Walsh and America's Most Wanted.
The tactic pays off.
Someone watching the show recognized him as their roommate and called the police to have him arrested.
The anonymous tipster says that Maurice is living under an assumed identity in Birmingham, Alabama.
They actually give the police the exact address where Maurice is hiding out.
On April 19th, police finally arrest Maurice Nesbitt again. And this time, they aren't letting him go.
Maurice is extradited back to Georgia, where he finally begins to serve the prison sentence the jury handed to him.
The same judge that tried the case sentenced him formally to the life plus 5 years, and he's been in custody ever since.
That brings great big relief. I'm pretty sure in the family's life and mine and everybody that was close to her, it brought big relief. It was definitely closure for a lot of people.
For any woman that is in a situation like Rashawn was in, there are resources to help you get out of that situation before he ends up harming you too bad or taking your life. And I mean, if the writings are on the wall, listen to your instincts and just go.
With Rashawn not being here, the world, I would say, has lost a very bright, outgoing, funny, caring, loving person.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
The boxing community in Dallas is pretty small. Kids get to know each other pretty fast.
They was good kids. Flat out, simple, good kids, too good for this world.
Police received calls about shots fired.
Officers get to the park. A lot of people are scattering.
There is a young man lying on the ground with a bullet wound to his head.
Everybody who's present is a suspect.
It was a lot of rumors going around.
Obviously, there was conversations trying to devise a plan to get revenge.
They took their room.
The good book tells us love is patient. Love is kind, does not envy, does not boast. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And that may be true. But for some folks, there's a dark side to love. One that's jealous, one that's cruel, one that will do anything to make sure it gets what it wants, no matter the cost. April 15th, 2014. It's a sunny spring Monday in Durkeeville, a neighborhood on the northwest side of Jacksonville, Florida.
Durkeeville is a very historic area for the African American community.
You've got a lot of good people, a lot of hardworking people that are trying to make the most for themselves and for their families.
But just after 2 p.m., a resident of a Durkeeville apartment building notices something amiss.
There's a smell of smoke. There's evidence of a fire. Something is definitely wrong.
The resident finds smoke billowing from the cracks of his neighbor's door.
The neighbor was a deacon in his church, and that's how he was known to many in the community.
He pounds on the door, but there's no answer.
The alarms are sounding in his head, so he calls the fire department.
Within minutes, both the Jacksonville Fire Department and police arrive.
An officer makes sure the neighbor is safe and out of the way so that firefighters can do their job.
Firefighters rush to the door.
They don't know if someone is trapped inside, so they're trying to get in as fast as possible.
They force the door open and make their way inside the home.
They follow this smoke, go through the hallway, they make the turn, they go into the back bedroom.
Firefighters see a large pile of smoldering, charred clothes on the bed.
Under a pile of burnt and ashy clothes, they see a man's body.
The victim was kind of on his knees, bent over the bed.
It was clear the victim was deceased.
He was mutilated, stabbed in the head. Just the sheer brutality of how the killing occurred. There was something personal here.
It appears the killer or killers not only wanted the deacon dead, but they went to great lengths to cover their tracks. But who would do such a thing to a man of the cloth? And why? "25-year-old Keisha Love always stood out in a crowd.
She has very high cheekbones and piercing eyes. Guys be like,
Keisha had a passion for fashion and beauty.
she always kept her hair done, always wanted her nails done, liked to wear nice clothes.
She loved to style, she loved cosmetology.
Keisha was hoping to make a career of it.
She can do hair really good. She intended to have her own business.
She was trying to push for a better future for herself, so she was taking classes at a beauty school.
But after a while, the financial stress of making ends meet while taking classes and trying to build a career took its toll on Keisha and steered her onto a dark path.
She liked to smoke weed. She liked to drink. She liked to go out and party. She definitely had an attraction towards people who were successful, but people who were in the streets.
Eventually, though, Keisha realized that her partying habits were getting out of hand.
She wanted to better her life.
She was trying to get on a better path.
Keisha decided to leave the late nights out behind and started attending church regularly.
Keisha is using her religious beliefs to say, God, I know I can pray to you. I know I can talk to you.
The church gave Keisha a sense of support and quickly shifted her focus. She was determined to go back to school and start a career.
She needed to go back to just getting herself together, and she had started on that path.
Things were finally looking up for Keisha. With her partying ways behind her, she found herself more open than ever to love. And that's when she met 33-year-old charmer Darius Jones. Keisha admired his confidence and take-charge attitude.
Darius Jones is a quote-unquote bad boy. He is not afraid of taking risks, taking chances.
He was a hustler, and he was about his business.
Women are very attracted to that type of authority and that type of power.
He offered a sense of protection. There's no need to worry, he's got me. She wanted that, she needed that.
Keisha became completely enthralled with Darius.
Keisha wanted to be with Darius. There was this obvious connection here, and she was going to do what it took to keep him as her man.
She did have hopes on getting married one day.
Darius is selling Keisha a dream. He seems to promise this life that she's wanting, he can be a part of that. He can make it even better.
After only a few months of dating, the couple got a big surprise. Keisha was pregnant. She could see her future with Darius, one big happy family.
Keisha and Darius having a child makes them feel connected to one another.
He says, you know, I want the baby, and I want you. I want us. And she goes with that.
They're still going about life the same way. This is a God-sent thing for us to be together. We must be together.
But what Keisha didn't yet know was that this relationship would soon lead her to commit sins she never imagined possible. April 15th, 2014, 2:30 p.m. Detectives from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office have arrived at the scene of an apartment fire, where the charred body of local deacon Jerome Stevens has been discovered.
Immediately they notice it was a violent scene.
It's about as sickening a crime as you can imagine.
Police couldn't imagine who would want to kill a pillar of the community in such a brutal fashion, and why. As the investigation unfolds, they'll soon uncover a chilling plot centered around a young woman who would go to hell and back for her man.
This is a man that is dangerous, a detriment to society. She's literally playing with fire by being with this person.
25-year-old Keisha Love thought she'd finally found her soulmate in 33-year-old Darius Jones.
Keisha has found what she believes to be her dream. in a man.
Keisha's attracted to him because he's a bad boy. He's got an intimidation factor.
She clearly worshipped the ground he walked on.
However, little did Keisha know, her devotion to her man would cause her to do the unthinkable.
When she cared about somebody, she'd be head over heels, ride or die for that person.
April 15th, 2014. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is investigating the murder of local church deacon Jerome Stevens, who was found brutally murdered inside his apartment.
You have a violent crime scene, and he's got a bullet hole in his head. He also has multiple stab wounds to the head.
There was obvious evidence that there was a struggle. This one looked like it was personal.
The victim had been found under a pile of clothes that was set on fire.
It's obvious that this fire is just to cover up the violent attack that this man endured.
While processing the scene, detectives find a gas can in the corner of the room.
There was evidence of a gas can being brought to the scene as some type of accelerant. And then when I happened to look up, I noticed that the smoke detector had been physically removed from that wall.
Somebody took that smoke detector before they lit the fire.
Detectives also noticed that some of the victim's personal items appear to be missing from the apartment.
Deacon Stevens' wallet is gone. That raises the suspicion of a robbery here. That could be a potential motive.
In the living room, detectives discover that the back door is ajar.
The back door to the apartment appeared to have been forced open. There was obvious damage.
What's more, an officer informs detectives that Mr. Stevens' vehicle is missing as well.
This man's keys are missing. His SUV is gone. So that gives him something to look for.
It appears the deacon was targeted. But by whom? After putting out an APB for the missing vehicle, detectives speak to neighbors for more insight.
No one had any reason to believe that Mr. Stevens was doing anything that would have led to someone wanting to kill him.
Later that day, detectives deliver the tragic news to Deacon Stevens' family.
It was complete disbelief. I would have never thought anybody would ever want to hurt him.
Mr. Stevens' family says the deacon was always one to lend a helping hand.
Jerome was always a big brother, big-hearted, giving, loving, all-around good guy. He didn't know a stranger. Everybody he met was a friend. He was just always trying to do something to help me.
Detectives ask if they know anyone he had been helping recently.
The weekend that he was killed, he mentioned the girl that he was helping.
The brother of Deacon Stevens says, I clearly remember this name. It's Keisha Love.
She's a single mother, and this is another person that Mr. Stevens is helping out.
The family states that Mr. Stevens met Keisha at church. They say Keisha told the deacon that she and her boyfriend, Darius Jones, had fallen on hard times.
They were struggling to make ends meet.
They were finding themselves living on the street or wherever a friend would take them in.
Mr. Stevens' family tells detectives that the deacon had taken in Keisha and her child until she could get back on her feet, while Keisha's boyfriend stayed with another friend.
Deacon Stevens wanted to help this young, single mother. He took her and her daughter off the streets, let them live in his apartment with him, and he didn't ask for any money.
However, what detectives would soon find out is that no good deed goes unpunished, and the deacon's need to help people would ultimately be his downfall.
It was personal. Whoever did this had knowledge, friendship, relationships of some kind with Mr. Stevens.
This is a man of the cloth, a preacher man, who sees somebody that he could potentially help. That could have been what did him in.
April 2014. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is investigating the grisly murder of Jerome Stevens, a popular church deacon.
They're still trying to figure out who would kill this man, a man of God, a man who helped his community.
Family members remember a woman the deacon was helping recently, named Keisha Love. She had been staying with the deacon while she and her boyfriend were trying to get back on their feet.
While Keisha is staying with Mr. Stevens, Darius was staying with another friend.
Detectives are eager to speak to Keisha, but there's just one problem. No one seems to know how to find her.
She really didn't have any local connections that we could find, so we were kind of flying blind on her, if you will.
Detectives switch gears and look into Mr. Stevens' stolen property, hoping those items might yield a lead to Keisha's whereabouts.
We received positive use of the victim's credit card at a local store, probably about a mile from his house.
When someone is found dead and their credit card is still being used, that's a pretty good tip-off to police that the killer is out there and spending their money.
At the convenience store, detectives scour the surveillance footage with the manager. The footage catches a man and woman attempting to purchase items on Mr. Stevens' card.
The card is declined, so they end up paying cash.
But it's the items the couple purchases that really gets the detectives' attention.
On that night, they bought infant formula, baby wipes, and 2 drinks.
Detectives believe the woman in the surveillance footage is Keisha Love, the single mother the deacon was helping out prior to his death, and that the man in the video is Keisha's boyfriend, Darius Jones.
I asked the credit card company, the bank, to leave the victim's credit card open to see if anybody else attempted use.
As detectives finish up with the convenience store, they get word that Mr. Stevens' stolen SUV has been found at an abandoned home.
In the car, among other things, we located the smoke detector that we believed had since been removed from the victim's apartment.
They also find 2 empty drink bottles in the seat console.
One of the things that was initially attempted to be purchased with Mr. Stevens' card were 2 drinks, but they ended up using cash.
Detectives continue to monitor Mr. Stevens' bank cards and get another hit.
The card was used at a very small neighborhood convenience store, and so we made it a point to go over there.
At the store, they show the clerk a surveillance photo from the first convenience store.
We showed it to him and he goes, yeah, she lives right there, and she lives in that 2-story house. So that became our next focus.
Detectives head across the street to the home. They knock on the door, hoping they have finally tracked down Mr. Stevens' killers. But the woman who answers the door is not who they were expecting.
She did not match the woman in the surveillance video that we had acquired from the store.
The woman says her name is Carletta Owens and tells detectives she is the homeowner. Detectives show Carletta the surveillance photo. She quickly confirms the identities of Keisha Love and Darius Jones.
Carletta provided great information.
Carletta tells detectives that she and Darius had been friends for years, and she'd let Darius stay at her home for the last few weeks. She says his girlfriend and their baby would occasionally stay over as well.
Carletta's there to help Darius. She's there to help the child.
Detectives ask Carletta if she had ever seen Darius with a gun.
She said he always carried a gun. And so we're obviously heading in the right direction.
Detectives ask if she can account for the couple's whereabouts on the night of April 14th. Carletta explains that she remembers the night vividly. She was babysitting the couple's daughter when Darius and Keisha came in around midnight.
She also was able to tell us that they had brought over baby wipes and things that we believed were just purchased at the store. She said that Darius's behavior had changed and that his clothing had blood on him.
Carletta says she also noticed Keisha was slightly hurt.
She observed Keisha with an arm injury.
Detectives theorize Keisha may have injured her arm on Mr. Stevens' back door.
There was obvious damage to the rear door. Somebody forced the door open.
Carletta says Darius and Keisha dumped off the supplies for the baby and left in a hurry. After they were gone, she found a wallet in a bag Keisha had left behind.
Basically, she had the contents of the wallet belonging to the victim inside the house. That was the first time that we could definitively say that Keisha Love and Darius Jones were somehow involved in the victim's death.
With this break in the case, detectives immediately put out an APB for Keisha Love and Darius Jones.
We made it a mission to find Keisha Love and Darius Jones, and we now had warrants for both of the individuals.
But investigators would soon learn that at the heart of this vicious crime, there was a love that truly knew no bounds.
He had her wrapped around his finger, and she was willing to do anything for him.
In spring of 2014, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is on the hunt for Keisha Love and Darius Jones. Based on witness statements, detectives believe the couple is connected to the brutal murder of local church deacon Jerome Stevens.
They run the history on Darius. They look and they see he's got a long rap sheet. He's known to carry a gun. It's a .22 revolver.
Keisha and Darius became suspect 1A and 1B in their minds.
Investigators put out an APB on the couple, and their first hit is on the location of Darius Jones.
Through some good police work, we learned that Darius was due to give plasma at a location at the beach.
Police stake out the plasma clinic and prepare to apprehend Darius Jones.
As Darius showed up for his plasma appointment, we had a tactical plan and were able to take him into custody, fortunately without incident.
Police were able to search Darius at the time and found a gun on his person that they were able to confiscate and take into evidence.
Officers transport Darius to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. And now detectives focus on tracking down Keisha Love.
We were able to get information that Keisha was on a city bus.
Once she's off the bus, detectives waste no time arresting Keisha.
Obviously, her arm was still injured and in a sling, so it made it a little bit easier to spot her.
Like her boyfriend, Keisha is also taken into custody without incident.
Carletta had been keeping their baby the whole time all of this was going on, but after their arrest, the baby went into the care of Keisha's mother.
Back at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, detectives begin interrogations. First up is Darius Jones. Detectives ask Darius if he knows Mr. Stevens.
I've been to this house a few times, actually.
Did you have any issue or beef with him?
No.
Did Keisha have any issue or beef with him?
No.
With Darius not saying much, detectives push harder, hoping he'll crack.
I'm telling you, he's dead. And I need to know why. Because I know how, I know who, I know where, I know when. The only thing I need you to tell me is why.
I didn't do anything to him.
Less than 30 minutes after you killed him, you're using his card. Darius, look at me. I'm not bullshitting you.
I understand.
Listen. Well, yes, you are.
No matter what angle detectives try, Darius denies having any involvement with Mr. Stevens' death.
I didn't do anything to him.
After striking out with Darius, detectives take a shot at Keisha Love. But she is hardly what detectives were expecting.
She was very soft-spoken. She wouldn't strike anybody as the person that could have been responsible for killing another person.
They start asking Keisha about some other crimes she might be involved with.
Do you recall recently pawning a television? Okay. Do you remember where that television came from? Your boyfriend is who?
And then boom, they hit her with a bombshell. They show a surveillance picture of her trying to buy those baby supplies with the dead deacon's card at the store.
I think she realized pretty quick that she was caught.
Soon, detectives will learn the truth, that jealousy's ugly head can turn violent on a dime.
What did you see when you went to the bedroom door? Darius beating him in the head with the gun. And the gun was off.
Detectives are interrogating 25-year-old single mother Keisha Love for the murder of church deacon Jerome Stevens.
Detectives believe that Keisha and her boyfriend, Darius Jones, were both involved in this heinous crime.
After showing Keisha evidence of her using the deacon's card, she begins to come clean. She admits that it all started when she and Darius began having money troubles after the birth of their daughter.
She wanted to get married and settle down with Darius, but they were having trouble making ends meet.
Keisha says she had met the deacon at church, and when she and Darius fell into money troubles, he volunteered to help her out.
Mr. Stevens took in her and her baby until they were able to get back on their feet.
Keisha tells detectives Darius insisted on moving into the deacon's home as well. He didn't want her living alone with another man.
At one point, Keisha had asked if Darius could move in, and Mr. Stevens said no.
Mr. Stevens was only going to open the door for Keisha Love. He wasn't interested in having Darius Jones at his house.
Mr. Stevens probably is feeling like he's not going to do that. He's not going to bring a grown man in his home who's dating this young woman.
Darius, it seems to let his ego get to him. Those feelings of, I have the authority. This is my woman.
According to Keisha, Darius was put off that the deacon had said no.
Darius now had a reason to be angry at Stevens.
He's tired of them staying in two different places. He now wants them to come together to be one.
Keisha says that's when Darius came up with a plan to rob the deacon.
She definitely was the type, like, when she cared about somebody, she would do whatever they asked her to do.
Keisha says she didn't want to go along with it because the deacon had been so kind to her and her child. But Darius convinced her it was the only way.
They thought that this was a way to get money, to move away together and start a family.
Keisha wanted to be with Darius. She was going to do what it took to make him happy.
According to Keisha, on the night of April 14th, she and Darius left their baby at Carletta's house. The couple walked the 5 blocks to Mr. Stevens' home with the intent to rob him.
Keisha is loyal to Darius. She's going to do it regardless because she has his back.
Keisha says on the way there, an argument brewed between the couple.
Keisha and Darius are in a heated discussion about their future. Keisha seems to be ready to have a future. Darius also seems to be ready to have a future, but not on the basis of marriage.
I believe Keisha feels broken. Keisha feels that the man that she thought that she was going to build a family with was no longer a viable outlet for building a family.
Keisha says by the time they arrived, the argument had escalated.
Darius is jealous of the deacon, somebody that took Keisha in, that is a role model, somebody that's trying to help her out.
Now, Darius is ready to take things into his own hands.
Just before midnight, the couple knocked on the door of Jerome Stevens.
Deacon Stevens answers, and that's when Darius says, "Hey, can we talk?" They go inside.
In his bedroom? Who, Jerome and Darius? Where are you at this point?
Supposedly Keisha is not in the same room with them, and she doesn't really hear what they're talking about.
Keisha tells investigators that's when the night began to spiral out of her control.
They started to fight.
Okay, you hear him tussling.
Keisha says she went to the bedroom to see what was going on.
What'd you see when you went to the bedroom door?
Darius beating on my dad with a gun.
What else does he do?
The gun goes off.
Points it at him and it goes off.
Keisha claims she was frozen with shock.
Keisha seemed to be numb as she witnessed this, not understanding what had actually transpired.
Mr. Stevens was gravely injured, but still alive. According to Keisha, Darius went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and returned to stab Mr. Stevens repeatedly.
Keisha is claiming that she is a non-participant of any of this.
That's when Keisha says she yelled at Darius to stop and ran for the door.
Keisha tries to run away, and fearing for her life, Darius goes after her to let her know, all right, and the question was, are you with me or against me? Are you going to stick here with me? Darius wants Keisha to be true to him, no matter what.
Keisha says she ultimately agreed to stand by Darius.
Is it possible she had no idea he was going to do this and was just scared he would hurt her if she ran?
Keisha says that from that point on, she went along with anything Darius wanted.
She seems willing to do anything for him, and she almost put aside her own judgment and common sense and became an extension of him.
She's still believing that Darius is going to be the way. Keisha still believes that she and Darius are going to build this family.
Keisha tells detectives Darius gathered up Mr. Stevens' wallet and keys, and the two fled the apartment in his car.
They had taken the life of this man who had provided shelter for her, who had opened his home with an air of trust.
The couple stopped at the convenience store and Carletta's house before returning to the apartment with a can of gasoline to destroy evidence.
They're able to get in through the back door of this apartment. They don't want neighbors to see anything out of the ordinary.
Keisha explains that's when she and Darius piled the clothes onto Mr. Stevens.
So did he actually light the fire?
Keisha says she hurt her arm on the back door as they were leaving.
She was very much there when it happened and had at least some role in this brutal murder and the subsequent fire.
Keisha's confession clearly implicates Darius as the mastermind behind the murder. But soon, police will uncover evidence that suggests Keisha's role in the Deacon's murder is bigger than what she's letting on.
It seemed like they were doing everything together. They were as close as they could be.
The forensic evidence came back suggesting that the injuries suffered by Mr. Stevens were committed by not just one person, but two.
25-year-old Keisha Love and her boyfriend, 33-year-old Darius Jones, are in custody for the murder of local church deacon Jerome Stevens.
Mr. Stevens was a kind-hearted man. He had allowed Keisha and her baby to stay with him until she could afford to move out on her own.
In interrogation, Keisha admits to being present the night of Mr. Stevens' murder, but claims she was an unwitting witness to Darius's fury.
Maybe he's just jealous, he's angry, and he kills him in a fit of rage.
Keisha is loyal to Darius no matter what, and you see that in her actions of doing nothing or even stopping what's going on.
Darius's influence over Keisha seemed extraordinary.
Keisha, in her mind, she just didn't want to be a single mother. No, she didn't want to do it by herself.
He seemed to have a hold on Keisha, and no matter what he did, she kept loving him and wanting to be with him.
But something wasn't sitting right with detectives.
They had a theory that Keisha was more involved than she was admitting.
Detectives look over the forensic evidence to compare the findings with her statement. The autopsy results underscore the brutality of the murder.
There was obvious close gunshot wound to the head, and then even more troubling was there were multiple stab wounds to the victim's skull. Somebody repeatedly tried to inflict pretty gross and unnecessary wounds to a man's head.
The most troubling findings, however, are that the wounds appear to have been produced by two assailants, not one.
We later learned via the autopsy some of the wounds that were to him would have been caused by most likely a woman or perhaps someone who was very frail because they weren't able to drive home the injury.
This report contradicts Keisha's statement. She had said she was present, but not an active participant in the murder.
Keisha claims she did nothing in the house, and she just watched Darius first pistol whip him, then shoot him, then stab him, and then set the place on fire.
To me, it was pretty clear that she was a much more of a participant than she would ever lead herself to believe.
Detectives surmise that when presented with the choice to participate in the violence, Keisha took a leap of faith.
Keisha was in a place where she's trying to decide, like, do I stay with this person that I believe was going to bring me love? She made a choice in that moment that I'm going to tell him I'm with him.
Keisha was so deep with Darius. This was another sign of the hold Darius had over her, where even when she seemed horrified by him, she was still with him, loved him, and supported him. That is probably one of the most jarring things about this case, was the way he seemed to both terrorize her and thrill her all at once.
Detectives continue to strengthen their case against the two.
They found DNA on the smoke detector and on the drinks in the victim's car, which were traced back to Keisha and Darius.
The evidence is clear that these two collaborated. They acted together.
While police are not able to locate the murder weapon, they feel there is enough evidence to hold up in court. And on May 22, 2014, Keisha and Darius are officially charged with Jerome Stevens' murder.
Keisha was blinded by her love for Darius and built her decision-making on being loyal to something that she really believed was loyal to her.
But the case would never go to trial in the end. Keisha and Darius both plead guilty to second-degree murder, armed robbery, and first-degree felony arson. Darius is sentenced to 25 years behind bars. Keisha is sentenced to 20 years.
It felt like it wasn't enough. They still can talk to their family. You know, their family can still visit them. So you still feel like it wasn't enough. They say justice will be served. Justice is never served in a situation like this. Him being gone was a lot to process, but he would say continue on, continue loving, continue giving. Don't let this one bad event change you. And that would be Jerome.
Mr. Stevens was a father. His life was lost. Keisha and Darius were parents. Their lives are lost.
Ultimately, with both parents in prison, Keisha and Darius's baby was adopted by a loving family.
It seems Darius sucked Keisha into his world, and she dove in head first, for better or worse, out of love.
I believe that her love for Darius blurred the lines of right and wrong. Because with love, you think that there is no wrong. There can't be any wrong in love. But when it comes to inflicting harm on another person, yeah, there is wrong.
The bonds of love can be heavenly, even divine. But jealousy and selfishness can be a powerful force. And that love light that was shining so bright can cast a dark shadow and swallow you whole. And before you realize what's happened to you, what you've become in the name of love, it's too late. Everyone has a past. But when you've hit rock bottom and finally come out on the other side, you're looking for reform, for change, someone to love the new you. But what if you put your faith in the wrong person? Maybe the love you were hoping to lift you up drags you right back down. And this time, there's no escape. May 21st, 2017, Dallas, Texas. The moonlit city is tranquil and quiet.
It was early morning hours of Sunday morning, so most people are sleeping.
Over on the west side of town, a motel clerk is just coming back to the front desk.
He had taken a quick break, but he was heading back to the front counter.
But as he peers into the lobby, he's met with a gruesome sight.
He noticed a body. He also saw the blood. He was instantly afraid.
Upon receiving the clerk's call, law enforcement swarmed the motel parking lot.
The clerk, he waves down the police and he gestures them to come over to the lobby.
Officers check the victim for a pulse and quickly determine that he is deceased.
He had a lot of blood in his upper area. He was not responsive.
You can see that he's been shot twice in the chest.
Police check the man for an ID, but his pockets are empty.
His identity wasn't known at that point, so they had noted his name as John Doe.
Who is this man? And how did he end up in a motel lobby dead? As detectives dig deeper, they'll uncover a tale of redemption turned horribly wrong, and a love-struck woman at the center of it all. "33-year-old Dallas resident Brittany Pollard has a new lease on life.
She was outgoing. She had bright red hair, and she wanted to be seen. She wanted to be noticed.
She would strike up a conversation with anyone.
Brittany was trying to make up for lost time. She had recently been released from prison for a crime she committed as a troubled teenager.
Like a lot of teenagers, Brittany was very rebellious. She was very smart, but instead of focusing on school, she fell in with the wrong crowd.
One evening, her teenage angst boiled over.
She got into a violent altercation with a family member and pulled a gun. She shot her relative.
It was a sheer impulsive act. She did not have any intent to kill the relative. However, her anger got the best of her.
While the relative only suffered minor injuries, Brittany was charged with aggravated assault. She then spent 8 years in a Texas correctional facility.
Initially, when Brittany went to prison, like most young people, there's the shock and disbelief.
Fortunately, Brittany's time behind bars helped her get back on the right track. And by the spring of 2017, she was finally rising from the ashes of her past.
That time in prison, there was a change that happened then, but it was as if she got the structure that she always needed.
Unlike a lot of folks that sort of use their past as a reason to not progress or hold them back, Brittany was trying to overcome that and push forward. She began going to school and working and supporting herself, and she was interested in mental health and helping other folks.
There's a genuine care for other people when you go into mental health. She was working towards that and actually was going to school to be a psychiatric nurse.
However, as Brittany continued to work on reforming her life, she couldn't help but feel like something was missing.
She really felt like she was missing that one piece. She didn't have someone to share her life with.
That is, until she met 33-year-old Brandon Jordan outside her apartment building.
He was selling snacks and cigarettes, trying to earn a few extra bucks.
Brittany struck up a conversation with the attractive stranger, and something happened.
Brandon was tall and handsome, and he was quiet, but he had a powerful presence, and Brittany was attracted to that.
Sparks fly. This is the guy that she can see herself with.
Before long, Brittany and Brandon started dating. The two shared a special bond over the fact that they both came from a similar past.
Both experienced issues with the legal system, so they could connect in that way.
Brandon had recently been released from prison after serving 10 years for armed robbery.
Brandon had gone to a convenience store and had robbed the clerk at gunpoint.
Just like Brittany, he was in the process of trying to reform his life after his time behind bars.
They kind of met at a time where they really needed one another.
Maybe she was soft in her heart for him because she understood where he was coming from.
After just a few months of dating, Brittany invited Brandon to move in with her.
He tells her, I'm having difficulty paying my rent. She takes that moment and she offers to let him move in. That's part of her personality. She's a caring, compassionate individual.
However, the emotional connection the two felt for each other was no match to their physical connection.
This is something that she was longing for, and she felt that she really connected with Brandon. Their relationship began to move very quickly.
Brandon becomes a stabilizing force for her that she's never had. Someone just understands her and loves her, and he provides that.
Anytime you felt like you've been missing out on love and haven't been able to find it, like this void is in your life, and now you have somebody to come and fill that void, that's a good feeling.
Love at first sight, a budding mental health career, Brittany was truly happy.
Brittany's feeling good. Things are falling together, and she feels like she's on the right path and doing the right things.
But little did Brittany know, her new love would push her back to where she started from. May 21st, 2017. Police are investigating a fatal shooting at a local Dallas motel.
The body had been found at the front lobby area.
When they get there, they see a man lying there in a pool of blood.
The victim, he didn't have an ID card, so they don't know his identity immediately.
As they're surveying the lobby, officers make an important observation.
The responding officer notices that there's no blood spatter. So at that point, he determines that this is not the crime scene.
Officers notice a faint trail of blood and follow it outside.
Police follow the blood trail up the stairs. Their guns are drawn.
The trail stops at room 608. The door is slightly ajar. Police ready themselves before they make entry.
They don't know if there's a shooter in the room. They don't know if there's a victim in the room.
Police burst into the door, hoping they're not entering into a gunfight. But what's beyond the door is just the beginning. And soon, police will discover a desperate woman determined to please her man, no matter the cost.
Brittany found herself being willing to do almost anything in the name of love.
When Brittany Pollard met Brandon Jordan in the spring of 2017, it was love at first sight.
Brandon and Brittany, they really hit it off. She felt so hard for Brandon.
The two bonded over similar run-ins with the law.
He also had a past history where he served time in prison, and they were trying to get on the right path.
They get the second chance, another chance to make things right.
Brittany was in school for her dream job in the mental health field, and she was helping Brandon get back on his feet.
Brittany was taking classes to become a psychiatric nurse, and she let Brandon stay with her because he didn't have a place to go, and she wanted to help him.
Brittany was sure great things were in the couple's future. But little did she know, in her quest to help her new man, she'd ultimately derail her own future. May 21st, 2017. Dallas police are investigating a recent motel shooting.
The clerk called 911 to let him know they found the man dead in the lobby and that he had been shot twice in the chest.
Detectives have determined that the lobby where the victim was found deceased isn't their crime scene.
They found a trail of blood, and they believe it would take them to where the shooting took place.
With guns drawn, police prepare for entry into room 608.
They don't know what they're going to find. They don't know if there's a shooter in there.
Police burst inside and clear the room. It appears the gunman is long gone. Within minutes, detectives arrive on scene. As they look around, they find clues indicating what happened earlier that night.
There was a small amount of blood near the bed. They found shell casings that were consistent with a .380. The bed frame had also been shot.
Police also find a wallet sitting on a bedside table.
There was hundreds of dollars, so an indication of robbery wasn't quite there.
However, the wallet does indicate one thing: the victim's identity. 40-year-old Alejandro Lopez.
According to his ID, he was a Dallas local. So at that point, they weren't sure why he had got a hotel room for the night.
But who killed Alejandro? And where are they now? As officers continue searching the room for clues, detectives are faced with the difficult task of informing Alejandro's family of what's happened.
They were able to locate the information for Alejandro's family and contact them.
The family was very, very upset. And they just couldn't believe that really happened to him because of the person that he is. Who wants to hurt him?
Alejandro's family tells detectives he was beloved by everyone who knew him.
He had a sweet personality. He was a hardworking man. He worked in construction. He really believed in supporting his family.
He would give you his shirt off his back, had to. This great guy to be around.
After detectives wrap up their phone call with Alejandro's family, they're informed that the motel has surveillance footage of the property. Detectives meet with the motel clerk to view the footage. First, the clerk pulls up video of the motel lobby.
Alejandro making his way to the manager's office, opening the door. Most of that is captured on video.
When he got there, there was no one there. He collapsed and he's just gasping for air.
The clerk then pulls up the video feed located near room 608. As luck would have it, they see Alejandro exit the room.
They see the victim stagger out of the door and go toward the office.
Detectives ask the clerk to scrub the footage back further. And that's when they hit pay dirt.
They see the two suspects in this case. One is a tall African-American male.
And this man had his hand on his pocket, most likely on his gun. Then an African-American woman with bright red hair and a colorful dress runs out.
The female has on a very distinctive dress. It's a tube-like dress with a lot of colorful flowers.
Luckily, the motel clerk is able to recognize the male assailant.
And he says, it's Brandon Jordan. He's been staying here for a while.
The clerk says Brandon's room is on the floor below the victim's. The clerk also recognizes the woman in the footage, but he's not able to provide her name.
The motel staff tell the detectives that, we really don't know her, only that she hangs out with Brandon.
She wasn't actually listed as a party in that room.
Detectives ask the clerk to pull up the surveillance footage from outside Brandon's room. When they view it, they see that the couple had stopped back by the room before they fled the area.
Within minutes after the crime, they got a few things together and fled where they were living.
Based on the footage, it looked like they hadn't returned since.
Detectives put out a bolo for the two suspects and prepare to search Brandon's room.
They go into the room and they find a number of things. They found a bunch of mail addressed to Brandon Jordan.
They also found some mail that belongs to Brittany Pollard.
Now they had a female's name as well.
When detectives continue searching the room, they find their most valuable piece of evidence yet.
They found a gun that was involved in the shooting.
The gun was actually put in the desk of that hotel room, and the caliber is consistent with the shell casings that they had found at the crime scene.
It seems the couple had stopped back by the room to stash the gun.
Brandon didn't want to get caught with the gun. He wanted to leave it there in that room.
As police continue to process the crime scene, one officer notices someone unexpected heading in their direction.
Officers see this African-American female come walking up in the colorful dress with the red hair. Bells go off. Could that be our person that we saw on the surveillance video?
She walks again right by officers and attempts to go into the room.
Officers stop the woman, and she identifies herself as Brittany Pollard.
This is the same name found on the mail in Brandon Jordan's room.
It's unbelievable that she will return to a crime scene, especially with cops swarming the place.
She tells officers she left something in the room and needs to get inside.
Officers arrest her on the spot. They told her she was caught on tape wearing the same dress, leaving the victim's room just moments after he was shot.
Brittany flies into a frantic fit.
They arrested her. Brittany started crying. She was kind of hysterical.
She was insistent that she's not guilty.
Brittany finally calms down and is taken to the police car. As detectives are putting her into the vehicle, she says something that piques their interest.
She just started talking, hey, I didn't do anything. I know who did. Detectives were in fact interested. They were trying to figure out all the pieces to this puzzle, and now they had somebody who had information. She says, I can show you where he is.
May 21st, 2017. Dallas detectives are investigating the shooting death of 40-year-old Alejandro Lopez.
After getting shot twice, he managed to make it from the room on the second floor all the way down to the lobby area. He's taking his last breaths, and he doesn't make it.
Police have just arrested Brittany Pollard as she attempted to enter suspected gunman Brandon Jordan's motel room.
She was hysterical. She was scared. She was crying. So she was really upset because she felt like she didn't do anything, so why am I being arrested?
As police are putting Brittany into the patrol car, she makes a shocking revelation.
She said, I can take you to his locations. Let me show you where he is. Let me show you where he hangs out. Just to make sure that they knew, I'm on your side. I'm not on his.
When Brittany was arrested and she was placed in a car, she knew that the detectives probably knew it was Brandon because the room was registered to him.
Brittany tells detectives Brandon is hiding out at a friend's house.
She says she's never been there, but he gave her the address so she could meet him.
She told the cops she can lead them to Brandon.
Detectives are suspicious of Brittany's sudden willingness to cooperate. After all, she was seen in the surveillance footage with Brandon just moments after Alejandro's murder.
Brittany was insistent that she's not guilty. She's insistent that she's not a party. She's not involved in any of this, and I just want to help the police.
Detectives know they need to find Brandon Jordan as soon as possible, so they decide to take Brittany up on her offer.
This is someone who's armed and dangerous. He had just killed a man. They don't know if he's out there on a killing spree or if this was just a one-off kind of thing. So they immediately have an interest to go find this Brandon Jordan guy.
Brittany gives detectives the address for a house on the north side of town.
While the detectives had Brittany in the back of the car going to look for Brandon, I think at first they think she was really trying to help them, but the detective discovered that Brandon wasn't here or there.
Brittany insists she made a mistake.
She says she had the address wrong, but she's positive she has it now.
Brittany gives detectives a new address, and they skeptically put it into their GPS. But Brittany continues to lead them from one dead end to another.
After you go to several different places and there's no Brandon, you're starting to realize that, this is a wild goose chase. She's just giving us a runaround because she really don't want us to find Brandon because she's protecting him.
This was her way of getting officers off of his trail, protecting her man again.
She was just trying to give Brandon more time to figure out what he was going to do and try to evade the authorities.
Realizing they've been duped, detectives cut the con short and take Brittany back to the station. As the sun rises on Dallas, detectives sit down with Brittany for a formal interrogation.
At this point, they knew of her background and they knew of her assault charge when she was younger.
The cops see that she spent 8 years behind bars, but they also see she's taking classes at a community college.
It seems she's learned from her past mistakes and perhaps gotten mixed up with the wrong man.
Usually it's going to be the boyfriend that's the mastermind. In this case, they just thought that, Brandon was in charge. He called the shots. Brittany just did as instructed.
They tell her, listen, you're going to take the fall for this if you're not honest with us. You need to come clean and tell us the truth and tell us how this went down.
But Brittany keeps her lips sealed.
She's still, in a sense, covering for him, wanting to make sure that he's okay. Wherever he is, I'm going to delay the police a little bit to give him a head start, to make sure that he's well taken care of, putting her man first and not fully thinking about consequences or herself in that moment.
With Brittany not willing to budge, police bring out their secret weapon.
Police had confiscated Brittany's phone during the arrest, and they got a warrant to search her texts and phone calls. And when they did this, they struck gold.
The detectives bring out Brittany's phone. She looks totally defeated. She knows what's in there. The detectives know what's in there. She knows the jig is up.
The text message was probably the most damning part of all the evidence.
At that point, Brittany knows she's in danger of going back to prison for a second time. But that isn't going to stop her from continuing to protect her man.
Although she was caught herself, still in her mind, she was trying to figure out ways to protect Brandon.
May 2017. Dallas detectives are interviewing 33-year-old Brittany Pollard, one of the suspects in the murder of 40-year-old Alejandro Lopez.
They had surveillance footage of Brittany and her boyfriend, Brandon Jordan, leaving the victim's motel room just moments after he was shot.
Detectives are frustrated with Brittany. They know she has a checkered past and seemingly has finally got her life in order. So why is she back on the wrong side of the law?
She had taken officers on a wild goose chase. She refuses to talk to them until the police bring out the phone.
Brittany has been uncooperative, to say the least. In order to get her to talk, detectives confront her with the shocking evidence they found on her cell phone.
The text message said, "I'm in room 608. Hurry up and come rob the man I'm with."
The text message was probably the most damning part of all the evidence.
It's clear. You can see that Robert was the motive.
Faced with the irrefutable truth, Brittany breaks down.
Once she was confronted with the text message, she says, "Yes, we intended to rob, but we didn't intend to kill."
Detectives tell Brittany to back up and start from the beginning. She explains it all started a couple months after she and Brandon moved in together.
All the excitement and fun of the relationship depleted pretty quickly because they had to focus just on surviving day to day, and it was a struggle.
Brittany says rent and tuition bills began to stack up, and before long, the couple was evicted.
Brandon and Brittany moved out of the apartment and it's a motel. It's about $50 a day to stay there.
Brittany says that while the motel offered them a quick refuge, coming up with the daily cash proved difficult.
They lived pretty much day to day. Brandon sold a little bit of weed and a little bit of dope to help raise money to pay for their motel room.
But before long, Brandon came up with a plan to get them more of the cash they needed.
Brandon knew that robbery was a quick and easy way to get money.
Brandon suggested that she go out and meet someone and flirt and take it full force.
He wanted her to use her charm and her smile and her body to find a man and think that she was into him, but really all along the plan was to rob him.
Brittany's a smart woman. She knows that this isn't the right thing to do, but I think she also wants to meet the needs of Brandon.
Ultimately, Brittany agrees to find a man and bring him back to the motel, where Brandon can rob him at gunpoint.
I think that she did it because it benefited him and it made him happy, and that's exactly what she wanted to do, was keep Brandon happy.
Brittany insists the plan was never to kill anyone.
It was supposed to be a one-time thing until they got back on their feet.
Of course, this puts Brittany in a compromising situation, but she also loved her man and she perceived it as a means of survival.
Brittany confesses that they put their plan into motion at a nearby bar.
She sees Alejandro sitting at the bar, spending money on drinks, and thought that he'll be the perfect target.
She sees that money. She understands that this is a jackpot.
Brittany walked up to Alejandro and started speaking Spanish. He was really excited to meet someone who he could talk to.
He was kind of shy, didn't know how to talk to women. So when the opportunity arose, when a female approached him, naturally he's going to buy into that.
So with the little bit of Spanish that Brittany knew, she was able to connect with him even the more so. And he most likely let his guard down and was able to bring it into his safe space.
Brittany tells detectives that she and Alejandro talked and drank for hours, Then, Brittany suggested they rent a motel room to keep the party going.
Brittany suggested that they go back to a motel, but what she didn't tell him is that's where her and Brandon were living.
Brittany says once they got back to the motel room, she continued her act.
She's flirting with Alejandro, waiting for the perfect moment to text Brandon.
It was clear Alejandro was really into her and wanted to take things to the next level.
Before things went too far, Brittany got up to go to the bathroom and secretly sent the signal to Brandon.
Brittany surreptitiously texts Brandon and says, "I'm in room 608 with a man. Come rob him. Hurry."
Brittany is having mixed emotions at that moment. She probably was sweating. She probably had a rapid heartbeat.
Little did Brittany know that one quick text would spark a whirlwind of chaos that would change all of their lives forever.
Brittany had no idea it would go this far. She said she feared for their lives.
May 2017, Dallas, Texas. While Brittany Pollard sits in police custody in connection with the murder of Alejandro Lopez, her boyfriend Brandon Jordan remains at large.
Brittany and Brandon had came up with a plan to get some quick cash to pay their rent.
The plan was for Brittany to seduce a man, take him back to the motel where her and Brandon were living, text Brandon when and where everything was going down, and commit the stick-up.
Brittany tells police after she brought her target back to the motel, she sent Brandon a text from the bathroom to let him know the plan was a go.
She actually texted Brandon saying, "Hey, I have a guy in this room. Come and rob him. Hurry."
Brittany came out of the bathroom, sat down next to Alejandro, and continued flirting so he wouldn't get suspicious.
Brittany says seconds later, Brandon came bursting through the door, pointing a gun at Alejandro and demanding money. But the robbery went terribly awry.
This man comes in, he's towering over Alejandro, and Alejandro has no idea what's going on.
She said it was very chaotic. There was an argument. Brandon didn't speak Spanish. Alejandro didn't speak English.
She said Alejandro responds by pulling out a box cutter and trying to lunge at them.
She said Alejandro was swinging the box cutter around.
Brittany says Brandon then opened fire, shooting Alejandro twice in the chest.
Brittany insists that Brandon shot Alejandro in self-defense and that Brandon was just protecting the both of them.
When Alejandro was shot, there was chaos going on in her mind, that this was not what she expected.
Brittany explains that no one was supposed to get hurt, but they were in fear for their lives, and Brandon had to shoot.
It was all focused on Alejandro. He's the one who pulled out the weapon. He's the one that did this. He was the aggressor.
Brittany's story seems unlikely. However, detectives have confirmed that the victim had a box cutter in his possession that night.
Medical examiners did find a box cutter in Alejandro's pocket.
Brittany says that somehow this person with this box cutter decided to try to attack a person holding a gun, which doesn't make a lot of sense, and it didn't make a lot of sense to law enforcement either.
If he did have the box cutter open, and once he got shot, he'd have dropped it. He wouldn't have taken time to close and put it back in his pocket.
Detectives believe Brittany is throwing the blame on Alejandro to protect Brandon, but they encourage her to continue with her story.
She was saying that they ended up shooting him, so they ran out because they got scared before they had a chance to even take the money.
Brittany says they then went back to Brandon's room, hid the gun, and fled on foot as they heard sirens in the distance.
I'm thinking they're pretty scared at that point. They're not fully thinking things through, but almost in a panic to leave behind the gun.
Brittany says they didn't get far before they realized their mistake. And Brittany volunteered to go back.
When they got off the premise, it dawned on them, oh my gosh, we have to get that weapon out of the room.
He was a convicted felon, and it would have been criminal for him to just be in possession of a weapon, period, much less that he just shot someone with it. That shows the level of dedication that she had to Brandon, that she would be willing to risk her freedom in order to go and get a weapon that he didn't want caught on him.
Detectives ask Brittany once again, where is Brandon? But it's no surprise, she pleads ignorance.
She wasn't going to give the police anything that would have helped lead them to him.
The one thing that stayed consistent was that she was trying to help Brandon.
At that point, Brittany Pollard is charged with capital murder. With one suspect behind bars, detectives focus on Brandon Jordan.
The detectives are just covering all their bases. They were determined to lock up Brandon.
But before long, detectives receive a very interesting phone call.
The police actually got an anonymous tip from someone saying that Brandon was staying in an apartment complex.
Police rush to the apartment complex. Luckily, they catch Brandon on his way out the door and apprehend him.
Brandon cooperates, puts his hand up, and he's arrested without incident.
Brandon pretty much knew he was caught. It was over.
Now that they finally have Brandon in custody, detectives are eager to hear his side of the story.
With all of Brittany's lies, detectives just want the truth. She's been trying super hard to protect Brandon. However, what's Brandon's story gonna be? Is he gonna flip the script on her?
May 23rd, 2017. Dallas police now have both Brandon Jordan and Brittany Pollard in custody for the murder of Alejandro Lopez.
Brandon got taken down to the station, got interviewed by the detectives, waived his rights, gave him a statement, and told them what happened.
Brandon gives the same story that Brittany gave, that Alejandro had a box cutter and he was attacking them.
Detectives slap Brandon with the charge of capital murder as well, just like his girlfriend.
They had a text message that clearly indicated that he was killed during a robbery. So now we went from murder to now capital murder.
One person's life is lost, his family is impacted, and it was because of the lure of quick and easy money.
In February of 2019, Brandon Jordan's trial gets underway inside a Dallas County courtroom. Brittany Pollard elects not to testify against her man.
For Brittany, she wanted to really prove to her man that no matter what, I'm gonna ride or die and be there for you. We're like Bonnie and Clyde. I'm gonna show you that I'm here for you no matter what.
The prosecution shoots down the couple's claim that Brandon shot Alejandro in self-defense.
This was a clear capital murder. We have a robbery and we can prove it.
They were planning to rob someone and take their money, and in order to do that, they were also prepared to kill.
The state theorizes that when Brandon barged in, Alejandro became terrified and tried to leave.
They believe the box cutter never left Alejandro's pocket. Brittany must have saw it when he pulled out his wallet of cash.
Brandon's a big guy. He's pointing a gun. He's blocking the door. He's speaking a language Alejandro does not understand. I'm sure he's pretty scared.
Prosecutors say that when the victim went to escape, Brandon shot him twice in the commotion. But the two shots didn't kill Alejandro, and the couple panicked.
Our theory is that he tried to pull that trigger more. He wanted that money. Could it be that the gun jammed? It's quite possible, and that's why he was only shot twice. At that point, I believe Brandon and Brittany said, oh my gosh, we have to figure out what to do. We got to get out of here.
The two then fled the room, left the victim for dead. No regard for his safety or his life. They were only concerned with themselves.
When it's the defense's turn, they maintain Brandon's statement and contend he shot Alejandro in self-defense.
He truly felt that all he was doing was defending himself and defending Brittany.
In the end, the jury sides with the prosecution. Brandon Jordan is found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison. In the wake of Brandon's sentencing, Brittany Pollard pleads guilty to avoid trial.
Brittany Pollard pleaded guilty to murder, and she was sentenced to 33 years in prison.
I don't know if she had just thrown in the towel and accepted her fate, or she just came to a crossroads where she said, you know what, I just need to own up to what I did.
Even though in the eyes of the law, justice was served, there's nothing that can bring back Alejandro Lopez.
All he knew was work and home and his friends and supporting his family back home. All of that was cut short because two people got greedy and wanted to take something that they didn't work for.
As for Brittany Pollard, she was a reformed convict with a budding career in the mental health field, someone who had worked hard to overcome her past, only to have Brandon Jordan bring her right back to where she started from.
She's probably thinking, what have I gotten myself into? Oh my goodness, prison again. I just can't believe this is happening. Almost like being in a nightmare.
Brittany's love for Brandon had ended up costing her the freedom she so cherished.
She did this all in the name of love. She was willing to risk it all to prove to Brandon how much she really loved him. And she didn't think about the consequences at that moment. All she could think of was, I need to show Brandon I'm really serious about us.
In the end, Alejandro lost his life and they still didn't gain any money. Both of them have really ruined their lives, and he lost his for no reason.
When you're looking for a fresh start, love can lift you to great heights and make you feel reborn. But some things in life really are too good to be true. That same love that made you feel whole can destroy you in an instant and pull you back into everything you fought so hard to escape.